Every year in Georgia, thousands of wild animals are injured, hit by cars, displaced by development, or left orphaned. But just outside Atlanta, one organization is giving them a second chance. At the Aware Wildlife Center, rescue is only the beginning.
I am Scott Lang, and I'm the executive director of the Aware Wildlife Center. I was in law school once upon a time, and a friend of mine found a little baby bird on the ground, needed help. We brought it here. They were able to help it. A few years went by, and then I was practicing law, and the firm said I needed to get some community leadership experience. So I was like, oh, what about that wildlife place? And one thing led to another. I joined the board of directors. I was going to be the board chair when our executive director left, and I said, well, I can cover it for a few weeks. And that was 9.5 years ago, and I've been here ever since. The Aware Wildlife Center is essentially a wildlife rehabilitation hospital. So we take injured and orphaned native Georgia wildlife and try to rehabilitate them and get them back in the wild. The other half of our mission is wildlife education. So we do something like 250 wildlife education programs a year. Ultimately, our goal is to be able to accept every injured and orphaned wild patient in Atlanta that needs help. We are quite a ways away from being able to do that at this point. Right now, we take about 1,400 patients in a typical year, and we estimate the complete sort of demand for our services is probably more like 15 to 20,000 patients, so much higher. So long term, we want to be able to take all those patients. There are a number of agencies that have regulations that govern our work, and also agencies that check up and inspect our work. The biggest ones are USDA, which governs the care of our permanent resident mammals and birds. Then Georgia DNR, which basically governs almost everything we do, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which focuses on the birds. So for all three of those agencies, we have to file reports. We have to, describe the procedures we use, the enclosures. So far and away, the number one reason that patients come here is because either they are hit by cars or they're orphaned when their parents are hit by cars. The reason so many wild animals are hit by cars is people throw food waste out their car window. Whether it's a hamburger wrapper or a Coke can or a banana peel, even something biodegradable, they'll throw it at the side of the road, and little animals will come to try to eat it. Bigger animals will come to try to eat them, and the entire food chain ends up drawn to the roadside where they get hit by cars. Basically, actually 100% of patients were trying to release them. So depending on the species, they have to pass certain evaluation, certain criteria to be able to make it in the wild. If they're a predator, they need to show that they can hunt. If they're a forager, they need to show they can forage. If they are, a bird, they need to be able to show that they can fly effectively, fly to the left, fly to the right, up and down. In relatively rare cases, they will recover and have a good quality of life, but not be able to make it in the wild. So they'll have like a chronic condition that they're basically happy and healthy, but, maybe they can't hunt effectively. There's lots of ways people can support our work. We are a nonprofit. We run on individual donations. Something like 85% of our funding is just from people who care about wildlife and donate, so that's huge. The large majority of our animal care work is done by our volunteers, so we have a fairly small staff that is in charge of mainly sort of supervising and training the volunteers, and then it's the volunteers that do the hands-on work. Something I would change would be to have just more capacity, be able to take more patients. The space we're in now is a converted ranger's house that's something like 1,400 square feet, and we are really bursting at the seams. We have animals in every room, animals in the bathroom, so just more space to take more animals would be very nice. Well, we always want to try to act in the best interests of the patients. It can be very difficult if a patient has a low quality of life, low chance of making it, but you don't want to give up. It's like, well, maybe if we did like one more procedure, one more surgery, one more splint or wing wrap, maybe we could pull them through, but you don't want to put animals through suffering, for a low percentage chance of it working out. So we always have to kind of balance all those things and weigh them against each other and ultimately do what we think makes the most sense. We had a short-eared owl, which is not a typical native species here in Georgia. We have 4 native owl species in Georgia. Short-eared owls aren't one of them, and they're really only here sort of aberrations if one sort of gets off track and stops through. And so it's very rare. We have never gotten another short-eared owl patient. So it's a very unique patient, very, excited to have him. And he was injured. We're trying to help him get better. And for whatever reason, I was here really late one night, and there was one other staff member, and nobody else was around. And he basically sort of crashed out and was dying. And I had to, not being a trained animal caregiver myself, I could really only watch as this one staff member was trying to help save him and was not able to. And it's tough, it's tough anytime you lose a patient. So I don't know, you just try to do the best you can and remember that on balance, we're doing good for many of them, even if we can't save them all.
From rescue to release, the Aware Wildlife Center is working to give Georgia's wildlife a second chance, reminding us that coexistence starts with awareness.